Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk Footy featuring Fiona and I Football Club. I'm your host Shaheen. Fiona is our co-host, and today we have Robert Beer, who works for Mindset First, who does a lot of work with our club, with our players, parents. And Robert, I'm gonna ask you to share some of the things that you do with the club in a bit. And also we have Ayla, who's our Active Start coordinator. Ayla, hello to you as well. Thanks for accepting to be on the podcast again. This is, I think, your second time, so good to have you guys.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Um, Robert, can I please ask you to introduce yourself to our audience and to tell us a little bit about what you do for our club, what you do for us, and why what you do is important.
Right. So, like you mentioned, my name is Robert. I'm a mental performance consultant, which is just a really fancy term for a sports psychologist in Canada. We throughout the last couple of years, we've done some really cool work with High Park FC, right? And we've tried to integrate different methods and different tools for athletes in order to allow them to perform at their highest possible levels as consistently as possible, while also trying to maintain the highest possible level of well-being. Right. At the end of the day, a lot of these athletes, are constantly asked to perform. They're constantly asked to be at their best, to be kind of near perfect, if you will. And so there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And look, a lot of young athletes not only deal with, the sports side of things, but a lot of these athletes are dealing with the everyday stuff as well. Whether it's, transitioning through high school and trying to find where they fit and where they belong, and just kind of every other component of just growing up. But my goal is to be able to provide these athletes with the right knowledge and tools to help them cope with the difficult situations, to allow for them to grow, to allow for them to build the right levels of confidence, to have the right levels of self-esteem, and to genuinely just be a happy athlete, right? A happy person who is looking forward to going to practice, who's looking forward to training, who's looking forward to competing, and who's just having a good time and really being able to love the game, right? And really being able to use that passion to drive them to whatever level that they want to achieve. And I think that's a very important thing. And just in addition to that, we've done quite a bit of work with the parents as well, just in trying to provide them with knowledge, right? Because I think being a parent of an athlete is very different than being a parent of a non-athlete. There's a lot of elements that athletes will deal with that parents have no idea how to help them with, right? And you see a kid come off the field and they had the bad game, let's say, and mom and dad are like, oh, what happened out there? Or like, you didn't play your best. Why? What's going on, right? And that already kind of triggers the athlete. I mean, the athlete knows that they didn't play well, right? They're fully aware. They're there. They were the ones who were playing, right? And so just kind of providing the parents with the right knowledge and right tools to be able to steer the athlete in the right direction, again, is something very important. It's something that we started to do together. And hopefully we can continue to build and work on that.
For sure, for
I
sure.
mean, where were you when I was playing? If I had
Okay.
someone like that coming to the club and working with the club, my experience would have been 100% different. There was no one here to be like, okay, well, here's how we build your confidence. Here's how we do this. Like, no, we were all broken. We were all just like mentally unstable. It was bad. I wish I had someone like you.
I felt that question too, to be honest, because where was I when I was playing?
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on that. I was literally just thinking the same thing, and this is why it's so important and it's so awesome that you have these conversations with the players now, Robert, and with the parents. I think player education, parent education, they play such an important role. Coach education, with respect to mindset and confidence for the players, because at the end of the day, everybody wants the best for these players and for these kids, and we all have to work together, and we also all have to put these people first and see what they're all about as individuals before we can get to improving them as athletes. So I see you nodding. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no. it's so wonderful to have discussions about how important knowing a person is, and how important relationships are between, parents and kids, players and players, and coaches and players. And I'm really happy that this is becoming such a normal conversation amongst people who work in many industries that work with children, and specifically sports, because, we, for a really long time, and we can ask our parents, we can ask from our own experiences, like, we weren't considered as a human. For a really long time. We were considered like a center mid on, the development team at Toronto High Park. And that's not who we are. We're a person first. And it's just so wonderful to be a part of these conversations, because I'm hoping that this is going to be, the turnaround time. And we're going to experience a lot, not less mental health problems or less mental health issues in kids, but we're going to have a better understanding of how to help those children and hopefully have better outcomes for those kids in the future. So it's just great.
You know what? I want to add to that just briefly, because right now I think that we're in such a pivotal point, right? With COVID and everything that's been happening. But not even like, the restrictions and all that put aside, but just the way that these kids are being impacted by what's happening. No social circles, no interaction, no training, no competing, right? So now you've taken away every single element that these kids look forward to. So you have them sitting in front of a screen all day, and to top that off, well, you can't leave or go outside because, you're putting yourself or others at risk. And so now you add that on top of it. You add, let's say a 15, 16, 17-year-old who's worked their entire life to potentially get a scholarship. Now they can't do what they need to do. So you add all these elements together and you have these kids who are just falling apart, right? And we're doing a phenomenal job at talking about that, but I still don't think it's being talked about enough. I don't think that there's nearly enough attention to what is really happening right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And actually one of the things that I was actually it was a bit like, it was bittersweet when working together, that the number of athletes tuning into the seminars was relatively consistent. There was anywhere between like 50 to 70 per session, roughly, depending on like Christmas. Around Christmas it was a little bit lower because it's holidays, it's normal. But what was really, really I guess we'll say upsetting was the number of parents that were tuning in was so little, right? And a part of that, it kind of signals off in my head as a massive red flag, right? That's, you guys are sending the message that we don't need to know these things. Well, it takes a team to build an athlete, right? Especially now, where athletes have all kinds of training methods and they can go and have crazy recovery protocols and work with 20 different coaches on 20 different things. Like, these athletes are becoming machines, or at least that's what's happening overseas.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that you touched on that. I wanted to mention this later on, but I guess we'll get to it. The first thing, no, it's great. The first thing is like what you're saying, because of COVID. So mental health for athletes, for players for kids has always been something that has been ignored for a long time, and it's something that they've had to deal with. But now with the impact of COVID, like, it's hard for adults, for me to take it in, to be able to deal with it. How do we expect a 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old to deal with it, on top of not being able to do what they love, on top of not being able to pursue that scholarship, Robert, you talked about, whatever it may be. And there was a survey that happened across the province, and there was like 3,500 responses, and the results were fascinating. It says 86% lack of social connection for the athletes, 82% loss of routine. There's no routine in them because they're stuck at home. 67% lack of structure. 1 in 5 athletes are experiencing depression, and 2 in 5 are experiencing anxiety, stress, or worry. So these are fascinating stats, right? So what is the result of this? This is going to impact them for the rest of their lives. And what's being done. So
Wow. Wow. That's I can't even. My God, those numbers are actually like scary.
my question is, what were the numbers before, right? Because we know there was depression in athletes. We know there was always anxiety. Fiona, you've been open about your experiences as a player. How do you think COVID is impacting these?
I mean, I think because my experience might be is different from anyone else's. Not everyone has had the same experience and been affected the same by COVID. But for me, like I was playing all the way up until my last year of high school. And then everything shut down. I didn't know what to do. There was no structure in my life at all because the Ontario government decided, hey, if whatever your grades are at the middle of the year, that's what you graduate with. Like if you're passing your classes, you don't have to do any more school. So I ended school in March of 2020. And then I graduated like a couple months later. I wasn't doing anything at all every day. Like I had no sense of what was going on in the world. I was at home watching TV, eating really bad food. I started getting really not, mentally, I was not okay. But the thing that affected me most was not being able to work out or play soccer, because when you go and you play soccer, like that's an outlet for you to just like get everything out and leave everything on the field. There's like that place for you to just be whatever you want for that 1 hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. So for me, it was like, oh, I don't know what to do with my life anymore. And then honestly, everything started getting better for me when I started being able to play again in the summertime-ish, even though we only had a few weeks of actual practicing. But thankfully, I was able to coach. Ajla reached out and was like, hey, I need people to coach. And I was like, yes. And then my summer was freaking amazing after that because I was able to spend time with these kids and I was able to spend time with Ajla and all my friends that were coaching as well. And it was just, I think that was like a pivotal moment for me to be able to go back to the field and be able to, not even if I wasn't playing all the time, but I was able to do something with my life. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Isla, you're also a teacher,
Yes.
so I really want to hear your thoughts. Well, your experience, kids being homeschooled and experiencing school from home, and then experiencing soccer from home, and experiencing everything from home.
Yeah. It's not to discredit any teenager that's going through any of this, because it is really difficult. It's difficult for every child. And I'm going to just talk about, as I said, not that I don't want to talk about kids above the age of 12, but the kids between the ages of 4 and 12 are tricky when it comes to mental health because we don't really know. Because kids between that age, one, don't know what mental health is. They don't know what it means to be really happy. They don't really know yet what it means to be really sad. They feel those emotions. They don't quite have an ability to understand them just yet. So it makes it even trickier for them to express really how they're feeling. And it makes it tricky for them to understand what's going on. So we often just say they're fine. They're smiling. They're happy. They're playing. They're fine. But the reality is they're not fine. And a big part of, between the ages of you're born in 12, you are going through pivotal changes in your life by the month. And it's that much more exponential in the early years. All of us, we have a lot more in our brains. We've developed a lot farther, and our development is smaller each year that we grow up, if that makes sense. I'm 26, I'm going to be 27 in a couple of months. Like between the ages of 26 and 27, I didn't do too much development, but between the ages of 4 and 5 and 5 and 6, you're a new person every 6 months. And that is evident in kindergarten. Any kindergarten teacher will tell you the kid that came in JK is not the same kid that left in SK. So let's think back to COVID. We have literally rearranged like exponential development years in their lives. And we don't think about those changes. We don't think about what's going to happen. So let's think about the kids who are used to being with their buddies all day, every day, going to camp, going to sports, going to dance and music and all these extracurricular activities and interacting with so many more people, have now been put back in their home with just their mom and dad. And that is something that they are supposed to not do after the age of 3. It's why people enroll in daycare. It's why people send their kids to kindergarten. It is why kids are literally the busiest humans on the planet, because they desire social interaction. And we've stopped that. But we continue to say, oh, but they're okay. They show up for online school. They're happy. They're all right. But they're not. And now it's going to be so much harder for us to understand those signals of why or if they're not okay. And it's tricky because parents are going through a lot, and having young children is really difficult when you're working from home. And I think we're going to see a really big impact on these kids, specifically on their ability to socialize, on their ability to be human beings, because they haven't had practice. Like we're talking about kids who, what you practice at that age is practice how to talk to people, how to interact in groups. And that's been stripped from them, and they don't know it. And we don't really know what the impact is, because as I said, they can't communicate that with us, and frankly, I don't see my issue with keeping kids from home, my issue with cutting off sports, my issue with online school is that there's no real urgency on the mental well-being of kids. There's an urgency to keep kids out of the hospital from a physical illness. And I am on par with that. I want no child to die ever from anything. I want no child to be sick. I want no child to suffer. But we have stripped the urgency on how they're suffering mentally. And that's a problem. And it's a huge issue worldwide now. And just as you said, Robert, like, yes, we're talking about it, but are we talking about it? Like, do we realize? So frankly, kids from 0 to 12 are impacted, and kids from 12 to 18 are impacted greatly, both sides, and I always look at them as two different, and they're two different groups. Let's be real, like high schoolers are not elementary school students, and they have their own components, but they are both being greatly impacted. And my concern for the younger half is the lack of awareness in how we can see that impact, like how can we see, because they're not going to just be sad and mope all day. They're not going to. They don't have that. The signs are going to be different. And how do we go about looking at those signs? How do we educate parents on how to look for those signs? And how do we warn our governing bodies on the importance of getting them back to their routine?
I think there's also a difference between asking elementary students and high school students to go online.
Totally.
Like a high school student, I think, is 100% capable of managing, going online. I know, especially, I'm not sure what the Ontario government did for this, but with kids who don't have computers or access to internet and stuff, I have no idea how that worked out. I'm not sure if they gave them computers or anything. But again, that disproportionately affects certain people and certain groups. And I think, like, if you're asking a 4 or 5-year-old to sit in front of a screen all day with all these other kids and they don't know how to use a computer, they have to have someone with them. But these parents have to work, and it's a whole chain. And I have a really hard time wrapping my brain around it, because it just doesn't make sense to me. And then there's this whole other part where there's kids who were born in 2020 who have never seen another child in their whole life. Like, they've been alive for a year, half a year, whatever it is. They have no idea that other people exist in the world except for their family. There's this whole aspect of socialization that happens between like certain ages, like 0 to 3, 4 to 5, whatever. And they don't know how to interact. They don't know how to learn. And like, children learn through other children. So if you're taking that away, how are they going to learn? How are they going to learn social cues? How are they going to learn anything? I don't know. I have a really hard time wrapping my brain around it. Yeah.
Just to add a little bit to that too, like I mentioned in my last seminar, and I was hoping that it would have grabbed the attention, especially of parents, but suicide rates of teenagers and young kids have been going through the roof. And that's a really sad thing. Like that's a kid taking their life away for what? Right? Because we've taken all these things away from them. And, unfortunately, not to make this political by any means, but there's a lot of things that I personally don't agree with when, we hear like Ford or whatever say, oh, wellness of people. No, that's not what we're caring about, because the mental health aspects and the long-term effect that that's going to have on these kids will far outweigh what COVID can do. Okay, COVID, let's say, goes away in 2-3 years, right? Like fully. Let's say it's like completely done. We don't hear anything about it. Well, that 12-year-old who for the last 3 years has not been allowed to engage in anything is now going to have all kinds of issues for the years to come. Low confidence, low self-esteem. Ajla, like you're mentioning, such a lack of interaction and knowledge of how to communicate with others, how to be with others. I'm sorry, but that doesn't get fixed with a vaccine.
Yeah, and there's a few things. According to science, like organized outdoor activities and sports, the spread of COVID is so low. It's completely doable. According to scientists, according to research, it's proven, right? They have come out and fully proved that. And not only that, I was reading the letter sent from Ontario Soccer to Doug Ford, and in that letter it says, according to Children's Healthcare Canada, so Robert, this goes back to what you were saying, children's hospitals are experiencing on average double the number of admissions following attempted suicide, a threefold increase in admissions related to substance use, and a 60% increase in the number of admissions related to eating disorders. So these are serious numbers again, that we're slowly trying to talk about, but nothing is so far being done. And I just hope that the government, Doug Ford, whoever it is, they understand what these kids need to do. Like I love, maybe you can add to this, but I don't know how 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds experience school from online. Like I don't even know how effective that is, to be honest. But when I have to ask my players to come to a Zoom session after a full day of online schooling,
No.
Like this is why we decrease the number of Zoom sessions too. Like it was originally 2, 3, and now we're doing 1, apart from the fitness sessions. But to be honest, completely, I don't even know if the players, first of all, want to do that. Second of all, it's good for teaming, keeping that team chemistry, still being interactive with one another. But how effective is that really?
Yep.
It's challenging for me as a coach to keep them engaged, to be effective, to add value to the sessions, but also from their perspective, is it really helping? Is anybody asking them?
That's such a good point. Is anyone asking them? And like there are 4 adults in this conversation. And if I ask any of you, hey, do you feel like going to work on Zoom today? A child is probably going to give you the same answer. From a kindergarten perspective, and I think that this would apply to any kindergarten primary teachers listening out there, and frankly, any middle school and high school teachers listening, I think it's going to be the same thing. But from a kindergarten perspective, one of my kiddos, kindergarten is a great age. They are very honest. And if you ask, they will tell you their exact feelings about certain things. And one of my kiddos said to me, Ajla, I love you, but I don't like you on TV. And that is a very honest, thing for a kindergartner to say. And, that child wasn't trying to be mean. They actually weren't even trying to be funny, as sweet of a sentiment as it was. And I did laugh because it was funny, but they weren't trying to be funny. They were telling me an honest description of how their life is going with school and how their teacher, someone they loved, and, and I love them, is no longer a person who is in their bubble and is in their space and they can't go to. I'm a teacher, a coach. We've talked about this a lot, is another human in a child's life who is so influential and close to them. It's someone that, besides their parents, they can find honest connection with and they can trust. And that's been stripped. When my kids are having a bad day because they've had a fight with mommy or daddy, that happens. We're all in families. We've all fought with our parents. Who do you talk to about it in kindergarten? You don't talk to your friends about it. They don't really get that. you know, grandma, grandpa, they're not around because you can't see them. You don't see your aunts and uncles. Who are you talking to? You talk to your teacher, but your teacher's behind a screen, you know, and the worst part is mommy and daddy can listen. You just about it.
And a bunch of other people in the room, right? Like in the Zoom call.
In the Zoom room, you know? So I do the right thing and I pull them into, I do a breakout room, the coolest thing nowadays. I do a breakout room and I'm talking to a child and they still can't tell me anything. So who are these kids talking to? Because remember, they don't even realize necessarily they need to talk. It is my job as the adult in kindergarten's life to know that maybe something's wrong. It's my job to pick up on the signals and I can't. You know, it's Zoom for children under the age of 8, 9 is I'm being honest with you, it's a sick joke. I think of myself as a pretty good teacher. I try my best. We do dance parties. We do interactive games. We do anything we can. And it's not enough. And the worst part is I'm a teacher. Sure, you need to close schools. Okay. Schools are a big place. Everyone needs to go to school. There could be COVID transmission, fine. But then you also take away all the other things in their life. Now they can't do sports. They can't do any extracurricular activities. And just like you said, Shaheen, there's been proven statistics that COVID doesn't spread during sports, during outside activities. And you've stripped that away too. So, you know, it's what's left.
Yeah. I can only speak from my own experiences, to be honest. And the period where we did have a couple of weeks, the opportunity to go back outside, everything was organized, everything was done, all the rules, regulations were being followed. Like when I drive by the field that we used to run organized practices, and no COVID happened. And now when I drive by that same field when we're supposed to stay at home, there's way more people that are just sick of it. They're on the field now, just random people, not from our club, but it looks like that's more riskier. That's higher risk than what we were doing. So it's just there is a way to run organized sports activities outside, especially not at summer almost. There has to be something done about it, and I just hope that it does happen. But apart from that, so I want to ask everybody, apart from that, we know we need to get back outside. We know that. Apart from that, what are some other things that we can do to help, first of all, ourselves, but also to help these kids, these athletes to deal and cope with everything that's happening? And once again, like as I mentioned at the beginning, mental health has always been something that's important. But now, especially with the impact of COVID, there has to be something more that we can do to try to help these kids, help these players to cope with it, but also to, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I think that we need to get these kids as much interaction as possible. I think that's one of the biggest things. I think we're teaching them detachment through everything that's happening, and it's just going to be a norm for them. So they will forever, or for a long period of time, struggle to form relationships. So I think we need to teach them, or spend a lot of time trying to teach them to talk and to open up and to discuss and to express, than just holding it in, right? Like it may be difficult for an 8 or 9-year-old to do that, because like Ajla said, maybe they're not so much in tune or aware with their emotions. They maybe don't know why they feel that way. They don't really even know what it is, right? I'm mad. Oh, are you actually mad? Are you angry? Are you upset? Are you frustrated, right? Those are all very different things. They come in different levels of intensity. So I think that's one thing that we can do. I suggest to all the athletes that I'm seeing right now is you need to reflect on a daily basis. Do not allow for all of those thoughts and emotions to just sit there and accumulate. Because 4 or 5 months from now, you're going to blow up just like anybody else. Everybody has a threshold, right? And we need to continuously, if you don't have that social interaction with others, you can still at least put those thoughts and emotions on paper in a judgment-free place, right? There's an exercise that I always suggest to athletes too. It's called like write and burn. So, obviously We don't want anybody burning anything, especially if it's a little kid. But they can just crumple it up and throw it out. It usually does tend to have the same, kind of effect. But right on there, some of like the things that are really, really frustrating you, and really genuinely put out your emotions on paper. And once you're done, rip it out, crumple it up, throw it out. That's it. We're not thinking about those anymore. That goes away as you throw it. And for a lot of athletes, it works. But it's about reinforcement, right? And like I mentioned before, the fact that parents aren't tuning in, they're not caring to reinforce, right? Where's the proactive mentality of trying to stay on top of things, right? I talk to kids about, hey, how's your self-talk during COVID? What are you saying to yourself? How are you speaking to yourself? Are you speaking to yourself the same way you would speak to your best friend? And majority just look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, well, no. I was like, okay, so why not? Oh, well, I don't know. I have to be nice to them, but you have to be nice to yourself too. Right? You should be like your number one fan.
Yep.
And little things like that. From the perspective of the sports psych world, I think that, the self-talk piece, the reflective piece, and the communication, as well as just trying really, really hard to create routines when there really aren't any, are going to be some of the most important things. Yep. You can always create a routine out of nothing, really, right? It's just about wanting to, and about having somebody to guide you along if you don't know how to.
That's exact. Reflection is hard, right? Reflection is, it's easy to say, but it's adults struggle with it. I struggle with it myself, right? It's hard to reflect honestly, and to be able, so that it's effective. So there has to be people that guide them, just like you said, teach them, because a lot of them probably don't know, right? Don't know what it is, don't know how to do it. So somebody has to step up, whether it's the parents, whether it's teachers, coaches. But again, it's difficult, right? Given the circumstances. What do you guys do? How have you guys tried to manage this whole situation personally?
That's a tricky one. Like, I want to echo a little bit of what Robert was saying about, writing stuff down and really feeling those emotions. I think it's important to also communicate with kids, with anybody, that it is sometimes okay to feel what you need to feel, and to feel it for a second, and that's something that I've been practicing myself, that when I'm feeling like I'm really having a day, I have a day, just like a day. I acknowledge the feelings. I don't like this. This is yucky. I don't want to do it today. I don't want to be online. And I just say it flat out. And then, of course, I do it and I get over it. And then I, like, literally, without writing it down, I basically burn it. I shoo it away, and then I move on. But to feel the feels, I think, is something that especially athletes love to not do. I'm tough. I don't need to feel anything. I did that. You can bet I was the athlete that was the worst at self-talk. I was like, you suck. That was my like go-to quote for myself, as an athlete. And, it's brutal, because you're left alone with your thoughts majority of the time, and it comes to you. The most times I find I talk to myself is when I'm alone, when no one else is around. And that's the worst, because no one can disagree with you. No one disagrees with you, because you're the worst. And so, just as Robert said, like, acknowledge what you're saying, write it down, get it out, and then practice talking about yourself like you're the best, like you love yourself. Talk about you about the same way you talk about a person you idolize. Like, it's so important. And then, frankly, if you have the means to, talk to a professional. I think we need to normalize psychologists, therapists, counselors, everybody. I see a therapist. I will talk about that until the ends of the earth. I sought out a therapist during COVID. It was something I needed to do. I needed professional help, and that's not, and I want to clarify something. I didn't seek out professional help because I do not suffer from depression. I do not suffer from anxiety. I do not have a diagnosed mental illness. I don't. I'm like, So if anyone's thinking like, oh, well, I don't have it that bad, so I don't need to seek out therapy. I don't need to talk to anybody. Like, you don't need, there's no definition for how bad it needs to get for you to seek out professional help. And do it. And let me make this also clear. Children can see a therapist, and you are not deemed a bad parent because your child may need to go to therapy or your child may need to talk to someone other than you. In fact, I think you are a proactive and wonderful parent for acknowledging that you are not necessarily a professional in helping your child sort out what's going out through in their head. And if you have the means to do it, and I'm being very clear, I understand not everyone does, but if you have the means to, do it. There's nothing wrong, and in fact, there's everything right. There's nothing wrong and all right,
Yeah, I have a couple things to just add to that. First of all, I don't think anyone should ever downplay their own trauma just because other people, quote unquote, have it worse. Everyone goes through their own struggles. Everyone goes through, their own things at different levels. Not every single person is the same. Mm-hmm. So, like, I see a therapist. I've been going to the same therapist since I was in the 7th grade. But that's because, I have anxiety. And I thought, honestly, for the longest time, you had to have like some kind of mental diagnosis, like a solid diagnosis, to go see a therapist. But that's not true at all. You can go for any reason. And being able to talk to someone who, first of all, can't tell anyone else what you're telling them and just keeps everything and tells you how it is, keeps it 100% real. My therapist is the most real person I've ever met. She will tell me straight up how it is at any point. If I'm like going off the rails, she's like, okay, Fiona, this is how we get back to like square one. But yeah, especially during COVID, honestly, I neglected to go see her. I don't know why it was, but it took me until I got to my lowest point during like the last year, because I was in, my first year of university. Busy times, busy schedule, everything is online. I'm just neglecting my own personal problems because I needed to get through my first year of university. I was like, nothing else matters. I just need to get through this year. So I didn't go see her. And then I hit like the lowest of lows. And I was like, okay, Fiona, you need to make an appointment. And also the thing is, I can't talk on the phone to anyone. So when I have to make an appointment, it takes me like 20 minutes to like build up the courage to be like, okay, I can do this. And then I do it and it's perfectly fine. But like I made an appointment and I had to go see her like once a week for a solid month to like get back on track and get back to where it was. And let me tell you, first of all, it was expensive. Therapy is so expensive, and it makes me, oh my God, it makes me really mad because
shouldn't be, right?
It should not be. It should be covered by healthcare, and I don't understand why it's not. But also mine specifically, for some reason, the coverage that we have doesn't cover my therapist. That's why I think I neglected to go for so long, because I didn't want to have to put that onto my parents, because obviously I'm an 18-year-old. I'm not making money right now. I am poor. And I'm going through school. So it's a lot.
I think you touched on a couple of important things, right? It's not everybody can do it. As Ajla also mentioned, maybe you don't want to put it on your parents. You neglected it yourself because you thought, you were too busy. Your mental health is always important, and you should always be honest with yourself, and you should always take care of yourself in that sense. I mean, I'm not a professional. I think Robert would be the person to talk here, but I always grew up being that person. I kept everything inside myself, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It prevented me from doing things that I wanted to do. It made me doubt myself at times, and throughout the years, and I've learned that I need to be open with people that I trust, that I love, and be open with myself and reflect. And I've literally started going out for walks first thing in the morning. I make my coffee, I go for a walk, I live by the lake, I look at the sun, and I literally just reflect. And it sounds cheesy a little bit, but it really does help me be in a better mood first thing in the morning, and it puts me in a better place, and my days start better. So I think one thing that I can advise to people that are listening, especially to players and athletes and kids, is try to replace things that you can't do with things that you can do that are good for you, right? So that's an example of something that I thought I didn't have time to do because I had school, I had work, I had to do this, do that. And then now that maybe my schedule is a little bit less busy because I can't be on the field, I've tried to replace it by making some time for myself in the morning and try to replace it with something that helps me. So for
Oh, yeah,
sure.
walking is so therapeutic. Now I have to go for a walk, and I usually try and get like 8 to 10,000 steps like a day because it just makes me feel so much better at the end of the day. And when you're walking, like you're just with yourself, you're with your own thoughts, but you can listen to a podcast, you can listen to music, you can do whatever you want. You can listen to the world if you want to. And it's just something that's, I think, helped me a lot, especially recently, because I had no time to go for a walk for an hour. But now I do. And it makes all the difference.
And I just want to touch on what Fiona mentioned as well, like in terms of therapy being expensive, right? And like we'll say for the non-athlete, okay, it's expensive, but they can get coverage. Of course, depending on like the insurance that the parents have and so on. For the athlete, it's twice as expensive because coverage doesn't exist. Sports psychologists do not get coverage in Canada. They literally told me that I am not a profession. So, you have this board of psychologists of Ontario who, you speak to and say, look, like by technicality, my designation is exactly the same as yours, but we've just added sport in front of it. And they're like, yeah, no, sorry, not a profession. We can't get coverage, right? So that makes it twice as hard for the athlete now because they know that's not even a thing. And I think that a large downside right now for a lot of people is priorities have shifted so drastically because people are losing jobs, because people don't make money. So right now, from what I'm noticing, it's all about money, 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 money. Let's make money, let's make money, let's make money. At the expense of everything else. Right? At the expense of my mental health, my physical health, my relationships, my family, my friends, everything. And I'm noticing it a ton with kids who can work. So that 16 and up kind of range. Mm-hmm. And it is just absolutely fascinating as to how quickly they are willing to cut off everything just to make some money right now. Right. And it just, to me, it's look, you make money today, you spend it tomorrow. It's a cycle that really will never change. But if your mental health and physical health are not there, you can't make your money. It's as simple as that. If you can't get out of bed in the morning because you're feeling extremely down, you're feeling depressed, you're having a crazy panic attack or a severe anxiety attack, and you can't get yourself to get out of bed, well, you're not going to work. You're not making money. So what's more important, right? And I think that this kind of conversation, again, it just does. It's not even a thing. We're not even mentioning it. Forget about actually talking about it, right? And just kind of to go back to what you were asking in terms of what has helped us. Like for me, my biggest battle always from when I was a kid was my self-talk. And with my self-talk, because it was like Ajla said, I also think I was probably one of the most negative people I had ever met. My self-confidence and self-image, as well as just like self-efficacy and self-esteem, was nowhere to be found. Right. But I did that for so long that even now sometimes it trickles in moments where I'm maybe uncertain about stuff. So the thing that I've worked on the absolute most throughout COVID is my self-talk, because it severely dropped off at one point. Right. It became very negative, very hopeless. I'm like, well, I don't see the light, right? I don't see that end. How can I do what I need to do if I can't set goals? If I can't work towards something, because it's not allowing me to, right? And one of the things that, I struggled with was I started getting real negative. This is useless. What am I doing? What am I like? I can't do this. Like, this is crazy, right? And I had to kind of step back and say, right, that's not the way. That you're just spiraling right down, right? And actually, speaking of like the water and the sun, I've started to look for very, very small things that make me happy. Very, very tiny things. And sometimes people laugh. I'll say, hey, man, I'll go get an ice cap. And that changes my whole day. Like, literally, I just enjoy the taste of it. It's great. It's awesome, right? Like, but that little thing for me changes a bad day into a good day. Sometimes I'll literally be standing outside in front of my house and like with my eyes closed and like I just feel the sun and like I'm just trying to pay attention to how the wind is feeling on my cheek and just kind of like taking a couple really big deep breaths and just taking all that in. And I'm pretty sure my neighbors think I'm crazy, but that there makes my day, like I will walk in the house like huge smile on my face because that moment was so beautiful, right? And I really enjoyed that. And I think that little things like that, looking to teach kids and athletes to look for the small little bits and pieces is much more important than, hey, you got to work towards this massive goal. Yeah, well, puzzle's not made out of one piece, is it? Right?
Yeah, I think great point, Robert. Mental. I think I'm trying to make it a bit more positive now because I want the players and the kids that want to listen to really grasp what we're trying to say. And I think just echo everything that everybody's saying is mental health is very important. Physical health is very important. We encourage players, kids, athletes to look after it, to talk about it if they need to take care of themselves. But we are also encouraging and calling out everybody else that is responsible for them, and that starts from their parents, that starts from their coaches, their teachers, the government, um, whoever it is. We are all responsible for this, and we all have to make sure that uh, we take responsibility and we're looking after our kids and our athletes and our players because without them there won't be any soccer. Without them there won't be any school, right? So it's very important, but it's something that we have to be aware of and we have to really try to make a difference and be responsible for. So that's my.
I would also add to like I just want to encourage everybody who's listening to be like extra silly. Like in all seriousness, just do things that make you laugh. Right? Like I always try to laugh at something on a daily basis that maybe to other people is not funny. I don't know, but I'm just looking for things to laugh at because it just feels good. Like I feel great. Right? Like I'm laughing, I'm happy. It's a great time. And I think that everybody should try to understand that we don't always need a reason to smile. Right? You really don't always need a reason to smile. Just smile because like you're here, and just smile because my God, it's beautiful out. Like, and the sun is amazing, and the sky is blue, and like you have both legs, both arms. Like we're healthy, we're doing it, right? Like this is great. So I think there's also that side of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I also think that COVID has actually provided us with an opportunity to develop skills that we maybe don't always have the time to do, like discipline. Oh my God, if this isn't a test of discipline, right? Let's work on that. Let's work on how diligent we are with staying on task with things, right? Like realistically, if we all did that, imagine how we would come out. We would all be machines, right? We would all be like just success everywhere, right? Like it would be amazing. And I think that a lot of people can do it.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're doing today and talking about some of these things and really pushing out this kind of information and content is exactly what a lot of these people need to hear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think I learned through this whole thing was just to appreciate the little things in life, because you never realize like how much you have until it's all gone. There was so much in my life that I didn't even realize I had until I didn't have it anymore. Mm-hmm. And, you have like, I haven't seen some of my friends in over a year. I didn't have a graduation ceremony. I didn't have a prom. I didn't have a whole last year of high school. So when all that got taken away, I was like, whoa. And I also really just started to appreciate the people in my life who were real and genuine, and started to weed out these people who just weren't adding any purpose and weren't adding any value. You know, there's like, I have a very small group of friends, and even then it's not even a group of friends. I'm friends with like 5 different people, and those are the people that I go to for everything. And I think it's so much more important to have those 5 people than to have 20 people in my circle, because like they're not, those other people aren't adding any value to my life. And I really had to learn that the hard way, and I had to learn it, you know, by everything being taken away from me. And then I finally realized, hey, you know, maybe these people aren't great for you. Maybe, you know, it's a little bit toxic, stuff like that. And also, just to touch on what Robert was saying earlier about the self-talk thing, when I started working with Nancy, one of the things she asked me was, would you coach other people the way you coach yourself? And I honestly was taken aback by it. And I was like, no, like I wouldn't, because I am so bad to myself. I am like I was like my number one hater for so long. And now I'm my number one fan. And I think I owe a lot of my, you know, development and my success through this whole year to Nancy, because she's helped me like realize like, hey, Fiona, you're a rock star. You're really cool. And you need to realize that. Like, I didn't know that I was so amazing until she showed me. And that sounds so bad. That sounds honestly so bad, but it's so true.
I think Nancy would tell you that you did it all.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. No, it's true. And again, this is cheesy, but love yourself before you can love others, right? Take care of yourself before you can. It's not selfish to recognize yourself, to take care of yourself, so that you can take care of other people. So especially as leaders, as coaches, as teachers, as psychologists, we have to be aware of that. We have to manage ourselves, and then from that we will learn. We'll take things, and then we'll apply it into our professions and into our people that are around us.
Yep, definitely.
Anything else that you guys want to touch on before we wrap it up?
I'll say one more thing on the topic of what we were talking about, just bringing it right back down to the littles of the world, and to all the grown-ups that are surrounded by the smallest humans on our planet. And that is, you know, Robert, I want to touch on when you said to be silly. Routine is important. Let's not dismiss that. Routine is important, and there are important things in life. But what is the most important thing is to take care of yourself and to take care of your kids' mental health. And if that means disrupting the routine to do something that's going to make you happier and make you smile, do it. Frankly, right now, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, you know, what I'm going to teach them through the Zoom screen is not as nearly as important as the pillow fights and silly moments and forts that you're going to build in your house with your kiddo, if you can. You know, laugh and smile and play, and let kids play. You know, kids are not kids forever. And I think one thing that's going to help children through all of this is their ability to be kids, and let them be kids. Stop pretending that they're grown-ups. Stop putting them in front of the screen, because that's what's important. You know, change your priorities a little bit if it's going to serve your mental well-being, if it's going to serve your kids' mental well-being. Yes,
absolutely. You know what? I think just going to add one more thing to that is, it's life's all about experiences, right? Like, that's what you remember at the end of the day, right? You look back, when we all look back on our experiences as athletes and when we are younger, those are all just experiences.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we remember. So let's have good experiences. Let's create these awesome experiences, right? Whether it's like a fort inside of like in the middle of your living room, whether it's just going outside and just throwing water balloons at each other, whether it's like just spraying somebody with a hose. I don't know. It doesn't even matter, right? Let's have those awesome experiences. Just because we have these lockdowns and stuff, doesn't mean that we still can't have great experiences, right? And I think that's something that everybody needs to work towards finding, right? How can
Those
we?
are those are the exact same sentences that my girlfriend tries to tell me every single day. And I'm somebody that's like into routine and I have my schedule and nothing can change. And she's like, buddy, you gotta let loose sometimes. You gotta relax. It's not the end of the world. And she's right. And I'm getting better. I'm getting better, but I still have a lot of work to do. But thank you all for making the time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I can go on and on, but I think it was really valuable to have you guys here because you all have expertise and experience in certain aspects of this whole thing that we're going through. And I think it was important for our players first and foremost, and also our parents, our coaches, anybody who's listening to take something from it and to make sure that they do take mental health very seriously because it's very serious. It's something that cannot be ignored. And hopefully, very soon we can go back to organized sports outside and be safe, but also be active and play and do what we love to do. So thank you guys. If you have anything else to say, I'm all ears. If not, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope to see you guys in person soon.
Thank you so much, guys.